Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. To be a pro in my book, all you gotta do is hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Newt Upset. Don't skip the line, jerkwad. So this story takes place many years ago when I was a young, innocent-ish kid, and I went to my local office supply store. I don't remember what it was, but it doesn't matter. I biked over there because it was really close, and I lived in a town where everyone had bikes, and this other guy locks up at the rack next to me. We both walk into the same store, get our respective things, and I go over to the checkout. Keep in mind that I was 12 or 13 and was really short at the time. This guy walks confidently over and shoulders me out of the way to go first. What the freak? What kind of a jerk pushes a kid out of the way to get into a line with a population of 1? Me. The cashier sees this and the conversation is as follows. The cashier raises eyebrows and says, "Sir, please get back behind him." The jerkwad says, "But I have to, it's for my senior project. It's due tomorrow, you know." It was 6 p.m. on a Saturday. The cashier says, "Sir, you can just wait in line. He, me, only has tape and pencil lead. You have 5 sheets of construction paper and half a shopping cart full of different items." Jerkwad says, "Come on, man, I really have to get this done." Cashier says, "Sir, if you don't get back behind him, I'll call the manager." Now, I really didn't think this cashier would really do that because the offices were pretty far away and it seemed like a pretty stupid thing to call a manager for, but Jerkwad boy gets back behind me, grumbling about missing football practice or some dumb thing. I appreciated what the cashier did, and I told him that. The cashier said that he hated people who bully smaller kids, and he really hated football players. So I smiled and said that I could maybe make Jerkwad's day a bit worse. So anyway, I get out and frantically unlock my bike so I have enough time to do what I really want to do to his bike. I go over and shift his back gears up a couple, and the front one down to 1. Then I biked it to a safe distance and waited for the show. Now, if you don't own a bike or you never have, it's really jarring to start to pedal and then your bike shifts gears. Especially if you didn't know it was going to happen. It's kind of like when you're sleeping and you feel like you're suddenly falling. And it's a pain, at least for the couple of bikes I've had over the years, to change the front gear because it's pretty big and it clicks a lot before settling into place. Also, you have to just put a large portion of your weight against something that's pushing back while simultaneously trying to balance on your bike. I sit and wait for a bit and realize that the cashier must have been scanning his items really slowly, or Jerkwad was dumping all of his change on the poor cashier. But eventually he came out with his plastic shopping bags and hooked them onto the handles of his bike and attempted to pedal away. Attempted. I heard a clunk and he kind of just jumped and swung his handlebars around to try and balance. About half of his things flew into the bushes and he nearly fell off. I peeled off, my good deed for the day done. So be honest, if somebody tries to skip you in line in a store, is going and shifting the gears on their bikes so that they wobble, maybe even crash when they go to take off on their bike, a fair form of revenge for what they did? Let me know in the comments down below. This next story is by Juhuan That Beat 122. No mask equals traffic violation. My mom and I went to shop and get groceries last Monday. My car had a non-noticeable dash cam directed at the driver's window. I built it that way for cases like this. Mom told me to wait in the car because she forgot her card at the counter, so I did. And while I was jamming to Taylor, I heard a knock on my window. It was a police officer. He signs to lower my window and I did. He said I'm not wearing a mask in public. By the way, I'm in the Philippines and masks were a very big deal here. I said, "No, I'm not. I'm inside my car." But by this time, he was writing me a ticket for non-compliance to the traffic laws. He forced the ticket in the car and walked away. I was flabbergasted but furious. Told my mom what happened, and then we went to the station to pay for the fine and to show them the video. I got a ticket because I didn't wear a mask inside my car. He got fired because he wasn't wearing any mask at all. Gotcha, Mr. Policeman. Never underestimate women, I say. It's already one thing to go up to somebody inside a car and say, "You're in the public not wearing your mask, this is a ticket." But to go up to them and enforce that while also not wearing any mask at all yourself? is all kinds of backwards. You're really going to scan cars to try and give somebody a ticket, and you're the one in the situation where you actually should be wearing the mask, and you're not even following the law yourself. They deserve to get fired. Our next story is by Project SBC. Never steal cookies from the computer savvy. So this happened a few years ago. My office went to the open layout plan. They got rid of cubicles and basically it turned into what we call the call center. Desks lined up next to each other and no privacy from coworkers. Each person gets a laptop, a dock, and 2 monitors on arms. I get placed next to this gentleman I'll call John. John was a fairly nice guy. We got along pretty well. He's probably 10 years older than me. One day my coworker, I'll call Dan, showed up to talk to John. They start chit-chatting and I decide to stroll to the cafeteria to see if they had any freshly made peanut butter cookies. And oh boy, they did. Still warm too. It should be a crime to sell them because they are addicting. I make my way back to my desk and Dan's still there. He says something to me and we start chatting. I place my cookies on my desk and turn to engage in conversation with him. We talk back and forth for a minute and he says he has to go. Not wanting to waste the warmth of those delicious cookies, I turn around to find them not there. Did I misplace them? A bit of searching and I come to the conclusion I didn't. So I scope out my coworker's desk for signs of my cookies. Empty plastic wrappers, crumbs, etc. Nothing. I ask my coworker John if he saw them, and he denies any involvement. But I wasn't buying it. A bit of pressure and he cracks. Says he stole my cookies as a joke and gave them back. None were eaten. No harm done, right? Wrong, they were cold. I wanted those darn cookies still warm, and here I had 3 miserably cool but still pretty delicious cookies. So I verbally vowed revenge. Now, I like to consider myself technically inclined, so my revenge couldn't be rage-fueled, but cold, like my cookies, calculated and intelligent. After a month of quiet contemplation, enough time for him to forget, I found the perfect tool, a wireless mouse. I slapped that dongle in the back of his dock, where he would be none the wiser. Now I could mess with him whenever and however I wanted, but I had to be smart about it as to not get caught or do something detrimental to his work. For example, coworker would come over to chat to John, John turns his chair to chat, I secretly get to work by pulling out the mouse, open an unrelated application like Windows Media Player, which was on his taskbar, and hide the mouse. He would turn around, confused, and continue his day. Another example would be lunchtime. He would get up to warm his lunch without locking his computer. He would have some applications open and I would minimize them. He'd come back and mumble under his breath and act confused. More subtle things would be changing where his cursor was in a Word document or email, since he was a keyboard looker when he typed. He would type his current thoughts in the wrong spot, and it would take him a few seconds to realize his mistake. This went on for weeks. Some days I'd hit him several times and others, none. No harm done, except he was starting to get paranoid. Since he knew I was technically inclined, he would ask, "What can make Windows Media Player start?" I asked him what he was talking about, and he let me know what his computer was doing. I gave him some puzzled looks and plausible reasons like task scheduler or maybe a virus. He then started keeping a log of these incidents. As time went on, I became bolder in my revenge. Instead of waiting for him to get up to talk to a coworker, I would do it when he would be writing on paper at his desk or looking at his phone. Cue my mess up. It was about 7 weeks in when one day he was playing with his phone when I went to change his cursor location in an email and he saw it move. He looks at me, sees my hand under the desk and says, "I suspected it was you." The ruse was up. I admitted it. He laughed, checked the back of the dock and found the dongle, and then it hit him. This was because of the cookies, wasn't it? And that is how I gained a reputation of being a cookie monster. Hey man, you're gonna mess with my food and take away one of my satisfactions while I'm at work? I think that's reason enough to toy around with somebody's computer in a very not malicious way, just to build up that little bit of paranoia. Why is my computer acting up? I don't know, cookie stealer. Why is it acting up? This next story is by It's Just Fine. Won't pick a game everyone can play? Fine, everyone can participate except for you. Last year at my previous job, we transitioned to work remotely from home for obvious reasons. My company reacted surprisingly, and managers had weekly one-on-ones with everyone in my department, 50 plus, to talk about how we were affected by the transition. As a result of the feedback provided, they started giving us a 30-minute fun meeting every Friday within groups of 15 people that they split us into. This was all good and dandy, except Jalissa commandeered my team's fun meeting every week and turned it into the Jalissa Show. She was a terrible employee, also had ADHD, and would have been fired due to her behavior if the department head wasn't her best friend. She once spent 45 minutes prank calling all of the employees, just quacking at them on the phone. Didn't meet metrics that week and blamed it on her school course load. She was obsessed with the game Among Us. When our meetings would start, she would talk over everyone, yelling about what the code is for the game and that we all need to join as soon as possible to get it started. There would usually be 4 or 5 people playing with her, but the entire meeting was just everyone else listening to her game commentary or what Jalissa was ordering for lunch. There aren't enough spots in a game for everyone to join, even if we wanted to. Over a couple of weeks, less of us started joining the meeting, and 4 of my coworkers just started hopping in a meeting with me just so we could talk instead of listening to them game. My coworkers reiterated that they hated the meetings too, and it was annoying. We were fine just talking to each other about life and really had a good time. It was all good until Jalissa complained to the department head that not everyone was coming to the fun meetings, but we weren't working during the window. It was then mandated that if we weren't going to be in the fun meeting, that we had to get back in the queue and work during that 30 minutes. Most of us thought that was a stupid rule, since they weren't working in the fun meeting anyway. I asked my boss if we could split our team meetings since many of us didn't want to play a game that part of the team played every meeting. He told me no, and that I just needed to discuss with everyone to decide what we would do, as anyone who didn't come but wasn't in the queue would receive a write-up. The next Friday, a couple of people decided to just work through the meeting instead of going, but I joined and asked if we could play another game that we would have played previously instead. Jalissa immediately unmuted and screamed, No, I have to win this time, we've got to play Among Us. I'm sending the code now, quick, everyone join. I responded letting her know that there were still too many people to play, and she said, You never play anyways, you can just listen with anyone else who joins late. At this point, I was fed up, but it was whatever. I just muted the chat for myself and played on my phone. Later that week, we switched platforms to a video app that allowed me to mute other participants and block individuals from commenting in the meetings. The next few Fridays, I spent the entire half an hour muting Jalissa every time she tried to unmute and blocked her from commenting in the meeting. People who hadn't spoken in those meetings in weeks participated, and we played a game that everyone could join. Everyone started coming again, and Jalissa eventually stopped coming as she couldn't figure out what was going on. My coworker Katie, who particularly couldn't stand her, turned Jalissa in for not attending the meetings as she wasn't working. Jalissa got a write-up and had to come to the meetings and sit in silence. IT couldn't figure out why Jalissa couldn't speak in the meetings. You know, I didn't expect Among Us to ever pop up in a pro-revenge video, but here we are. In a way, I kind of feel bad for Jalissa because, let's say finally you take over control of that group, you start playing something other than Among Us that everybody can join in. Even if Jalissa did want to join in, they're absolutely blackballed. Which makes me feel bad, even though I probably shouldn't because of the way Jalissa treated everybody else. And our final story of the day is by Yak03, Rude to a Kid on a Flight. This story was over 5 years ago, so details might be a little jumbled. When I was younger, my dad moved to China and me and my brother would visit him every year, paying for the airline to chaperone us. We just boarded the plane for an 11 to 12 hour flight, and the man in front of me decided to lean his seat all the way back. I was young, so legroom wasn't too bad for me, but it made it much harder to watch movies, which annoyed me. Wanting to be responsible, I asked the stewardess, who was assigned to look after us, if she could ask him to move the seat up, which she did, but said once the plane was in the air, she couldn't do much. Once we were in the air, he proceeded to lean his chair back and ignored me when I asked him to move it up. So I decided to stick my legs up and use his chair almost like a leg press. After a lot of annoyed looks from him, he got a stewardess who, after seeing what was happening, said she would try and sort it, but because I was a kid, she couldn't do much. After a while, he decided that leaning back wasn't worth the amateur back massage and gave up. On the same flight, my younger brother, around 8 at the time, was loudly eating crisps, and the man's wife tried to ask him to be quiet, which he ignored. So she tried to reach back and slap his leg. Him, being a little devil as a kid, decided that he would bite her as hard as he could. The story ended very similar to the first. I will say that in this situation, if I paid for an airline seat and they have the ability to lean back and it's not affecting their legroom, the only reason they want you to put the seat up is because they want to watch the movie, I'd be pretty upset too. Especially if it's an 11 to 12 hour flight. So all you probably want to do is lean the seat back and take a nap. And some kid keeps kicking the seat back up because they want to watch the movie. I think in general this is just the airline's fault. If everybody wasn't packed in like sardines, it wouldn't be a problem. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.